From a hobby during lockdown to an international hit, the Digital Sisterhood podcast has grown quite a bit. By capturing inspirational moments of Muslim women's lives, this iconic internet sensation has showcased its storytelling flair and by the grace of Allah Azza wa Jal, topped Spotify podcast charts.
As it set global shockwaves of newfound unity, empathy, confidence, and even a renewed love for the deen, all whilst bringing Islamic sisterhood to the spotlight.
TDS continues to take the world by a storm with the unique host Cadar Mohamud, the heartwarming choice behind the TDS voice. Let's meet her.
Everything is a story. The faster you locate what that is, I mean, there's things that come out of it. You know, I was born in a Muslim household, but I didn't wear hijab until I was 20. You know, until I went searching and understanding my faith and my religion. It took me to a completely different path, and now I just want to help others find themselves. In this case, through their stories.
Make sure to like,
subscribe,
and hit that notification bell
to stay tuned to our content. Joining us all the way from Toronto, Canada, Cadar Mohamud, the trademark voice of the Digital Sisterhood Podcast.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, our dear sister and friend,
Cadar, and you're listening to OnePath Network Podcast.
Crazy. How did we go with the famous intro?
I mean, I think it was amazing. I mean, like,
wow,
it's a legendary trade, you know.
It's trademarked.
It should be at this point.
It's trademarked. Did you realize how big your voice or that Salam would become worldwide?
I had no idea. And it just was a natural opening to any conversation. Is to say Assalamu alaikum to everybody. You know, it's like that's just the thing that you do as a Muslim is you start with Assalamu alaikum. And so obviously the podcast will start with Assalamu alaikum. But I'm really proud that what is popular is the Salam. So I'm very honored and happy about that. You know, I definitely did not make it up. This is, you know, definitely did not. But alhamdulillah that people really, really appreciate it.
Alhamdulillah, for sure.
It's as original as it gets. Alhamdulillah, Allahumma barik. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserve your works and the Digital Sisterhood podcast efforts. You've got a great team behind you. And today, you are being the podcasted, not the podcaster. How does it feel being on the other side of the podcasting table?
Very nervous. I like to interview others. I don't really enjoy being in the spotlight, believe it or not. But I'm gonna take it easy. You know, I'm gonna try to be like my guests. Yeah. But I can see why they're always so nervous. It's a very interesting spot to be in. But alhamdulillah,
it can be uncomfortable being in the limelight. Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. So, Cadar, starting the Digital Sisterhood podcast from your bedroom to being now a global sensation. Tell us a little bit about your story.
I mean, when we started the podcast, it started in the middle of the pandemic. Well, actually, the beginning of the pandemic. And it just started off with the intention of just wanting to inspire, you know, especially Muslim women to kind of, you know, own their own stories and be inspired to be unapologetic about their beliefs and just, you know, find themselves and be inspired by the story. It just was simply just to share a good word. I mean, that was the eugenesis and the intent of the podcast was this podcast is simply to share a good word. As Prophet says, good charity. But it's not one that people often think about, right? When people think about sadaqah, they just think of just money or, you know, there's a lot of forms of it. And sharing a good word to somebody else is a big one, you know? And so the podcast is kind of like that. It's like, what can you say to somebody else that is generous and kind and empathetic? And so, I mean, we just did it for fun. And I mean, I didn't know at the time podcasts could be so big or be so popular. 6 months later, I'm like, whoa, how did this happen? SubhanAllah. But, you know, when I think about it more, I just think that it's something that when you have good intentions, I like to believe that I had good intentions. I like to believe the team had good intentions when we started to embark on this journey. That also made it easy. But yeah, a lot of it is like unexplainable.
Yeah, 100%.
It's a bit of a mystery
You mentioned, I think, in a podcast of yours, I feel like the last one that I just listened to, you said that this was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's project. And when I thought about that, I was like, wow, like when you think about it, you're leaving behind your legacy, but it was only enabled because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed it to flourish and to get so big.
Absolutely.
Alhamdulillah.
And we give that credit to him.
Yeah.
Right?
He deserves that credit.
Yeah, he does. Especially, I mean, the podcast's whole point is to glorify him. It's really like the guest is the story, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is who we're trying to discuss. And I'm happy, like, alhamdulillah. And I will always glorify Allah first for it, which is, I think, important to do. I don't think people do it anymore as much. When they gain certain level of success, people forget about Allah. But he's in the middle of everything that we do.
So beautiful, mashallah.
And that sincerity is quite important because we're just planting the seed. You know, we don't know what the results are going to be or what the outcome is. So I think the growth of the Digital Sisterhood podcast was amazing. Allahumma barik. You topped the Spotify charts in the UK. How does that feel?
You know what? My favorite part about topping the charts is that I was competing with like podcasters who aren't Muslim, who are very popular with $1 million budgets, $1 million marketing, and $1 million teams, right? And here we are, essentially, from my bedroom with a team all over the world, working with what we have. And here we are, one voice, one story, beating people like Meghan Markle at the time, who was like doing a podcast, and Joe Rogan, and like these people with huge influence. And one story kicked them off the charts. One story that talked about Allah, right? Yeah. It's amazing because the story is like, I know somebody saw it on the charts, thought, what is this? And clicked it. And then they heard these, like, it just blows my mind. And I knew they were going to hear something. And I remember that, especially that particular episode, which was the episode, her name is Hannah. I mean, we recited Surah Dawah in that episode. You know what I'm saying? The verses were recited. It was explained. It was a really difficult story. And here it was, like, on a massive stage, like really.
It was a real raw story, but it had such a subtly Dawah aspect to it.
Yeah, it was very. Oh, I love subtle. I've never been a person that's very upfront about anything. I think that being Muslim generally is Dawah, even our existence, the way that we walk, talk, is always leaving something for somebody to think about, to see. So, I mean, being a Muslim is our way of life. So alhamdulillah, like, it's just, it's truly, it just was a reminder to me that Allah SWT gives us success. Nobody else can give you that. He can only give you, I mean, how else could that have happened? Right? Besides his permission. So it makes you feel like a little bit invincible, and you should feel that way. Because if Allah SWT is on your side, who can stop you?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And at that international stage, did that actually change the goals of the Digital Sisterhood podcast?
Change the goals? No. It didn't change the goals. I mean, for us, it was like our goals was very clear. It was to create a sense of understanding, and to provide belonging for others, and for them to kind of look at themselves and recognize that maybe you're at one place, but it's totally possible for you to be in another place. Right? Oftentimes when we tell stories, we might tell people stories from the top of it. Like, I was doing this, I was doing that, and I was like, in a good place. But sometimes we miss out the journey, right? SubhanAllah, the journey says a lot about where a person is going to end up, right? And it's important as an important principle in general that it's not about how we started. It's about how you end.
SubhanAllah.
That's the truth. It's always been about how it ends. And so if people got anything from the podcast, I hope they understood that it's the journey, but it's about how you end. It's how you stick the landing. It's how you pass. It's what you leave, right? And to judge less about their past, because if Allah's forgiving you for it, then why haven't you forgiven yourself?
Yeah, that's really beautiful. And I think that leads to, like, how do you find, you've got so many amazing, raw, real stories. And I think that's what's the most valuable thing about your podcast, that it's real women who've gone through real experiences, and you've created a platform where they're comfortable enough to share that with, a wider audience. But I have a question. To find these authentic voices, do the stories find you, or do you find these stories?
I like to say that Allah SWT allows us to find these stories. Season 1, was a pilot season. Most of the guests of season 1 were my friends, because obviously, I need people to trust me with their stories. Obviously, like, it's hard to ask a stranger who doesn't know you what you're going to do with their story, because it's so personal. You're asking people for personal, and personal stories of them. Maybe they're, very particular about, but obviously my friends know me very well. And they know my character very well. So it was when I told them, hey, I want to tell stories to inspire Muslims. They're like, oh yeah, sure. Like, if you, and these stories were ones that impacted me. Like the episode, those were stories that I knew about that did a number for me. So I was like, oh, like when I went up to them, like, yo, you know, your story did this for me. I think it would do something for somebody else. So that's how it kind of was. And it was also an invitation, right? This is an invitation to do something good, you know? And alhamdulillah, I'm so fortunate to be around women who were always willing to do khair, always, you know? And so it was like really easy. And those are the episodes that like really took things from 0 to 100,
100%,
you know? And then there were some, alhamdulillah, guests I got to meet from other friends who kind of were like, oh, they would love to tell their story. And alhamdulillah, they were also in season 1. But season 2 were stories that we didn't, that were submitted. A lot of them were submitted. A few were obviously friends that we knew. But alhamdulillah, now the podcast has a lot of submissions. Yeah. Like if I were to do a call out right now, like I'd get like hundreds and hundreds of like emails of, I have a story to tell.
Wow.
And I'd be like, okay, like Mrs. Dawah on the computer, just responding to them or like reading them. And it's just really amazing. Beautiful to read what people have gone through and what Allah has allowed them to accomplish. It's just, yeah, it's amazing.
And it goes to show that, again, they feel comfortable enough to reach out to you, whereas a lot of them may have not shared their stories in a different way or to anyone. And now they've seen that, you know, people are comfortable enough and I've heard stories and I'm relating to them and maybe this might be of benefit to other people. So it's like kudos to you for creating that platform and to actually giving people a space, particularly Muslim women, you know, to actually vocalize and speak their truth.
Yeah, alhamdulillah. I mean, I'm glad that Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala chose us to do this work. I think, you know, I can't fully say that it was my, you know, it is, we were able to be custodians of it. But it's Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala plants those ideas and that intentionality to do that work. And I hope that we can keep doing it, you know. Maybe it's us, maybe tomorrow somebody else, you know. We never know how long Allah allows us to do certain things. But alhamdulillah for the opportunity to do it anyway.
We make the most of it.
Yeah, we do. We have to. We have gifts. Allah gave everybody gifts.
Yeah.
But the question always remains, how are we using those gifts?
100%.
Right. And we always ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to use us and not replace us.
Absolutely.
It's so important. And that gift of storytelling and that craft that you have, you know, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you and your team. Do you ever feel like you're almost the main character in your own movie?
You know, I always did it and didn't always. You know, in my episode, The Wallflower, I talked about like that teacher that kind of changed for me, that thinking of like, there's nothing wrong with, you know, looking at yourself in a way that's good. I've always wanted to just blend the background. Fortunately, alhamdulillah, I grew past that. Because I think as a Muslim, you can't be a wallflower. I think as a Muslim, you have to be unapologetic.
That's so beautiful.
You know, you have to be able to be comfortable to take space. You have to. You know, subhanAllah, like, I mean, we're on this planet, you know, as Muslims, like, you just can't be a side character. You're not meant to. You know, you're not meant to. You weren't chosen to be. And so having that personal development was really important to me. But now looking back, I understand why it happened. You know, subhanAllah, I think about, I don't think I could have done this if I was that girl. That's the truth. I don't think I could have done that. And so I'm really, really obsessed with hearing stories of people's development, right? How did somebody get from 0 to 100? I think it's a personal curiosity for me. It's like, you just think, oh my God, subhanAllah, why did Allah choose me? You know, like, do you ever think about, like, why did He choose me to be a Muslim? You know, what's my purpose? What am I meant to fulfill? Those are natural questions to have. Right? And those are things I always thought about.
Yeah. And Allah puts you through experiences that actually make you realize like what your purpose is. Like, you know, we're Muslims, but I think as Muslims, we have a role in the community as well. And I think every single Muslimah has a particular role that they will play in the community in some way or another. And I think it's so important for us to actually realize what our role is, and to take it upon ourselves to actually fulfill that role. Because you see it so many times where people kind of shy away and they're like, you know what, someone else can do that. You know what, like I see this is an opportunity, this is something that I can do, but someone else can do it. And I think we need to kind of start having that confidence within ourselves to be like, hey, you know what, I can do this.
We're not just bystanders. You know, where everyone is instrumental in the community.
Yeah, but you have to believe that you are. You have to believe that you have something to contribute, something to give. But you have to also believe that you have talents and gifts. And part of that is self-exploration. How many of us are exploring ourselves, you know? And part of that exploration is learning about your faith. And somehow when you learn about your faith, somehow you find your confidence, you find your purpose, you find what you're supposed to be doing, and it just allows you to just be. And I think a lot of people feel lost. And when you feel lost, you also don't know what you're supposed to be doing. And I always say, like, self-exploration starts with faith. You know, learn who created you, right? How He fashioned you, how He designed you, what He intended for you. You know, and that's how my journey started with stuff. You know, I was born in a Muslim household, but I didn't wear hijab until I was 20. You know, until I went searching and understanding like my faith and my religion, and it transformed everything about me. Yeah. You know, and it took me to a completely different path, and now I just want to help others find themselves. In this case, through their stories.
Through their stories, yeah. And it's a beautiful way of doing it, I think, through stories. It's not, again, like we talked earlier, like it's not dawah on an explicit level. It's very subtle. It's through you, through your story, through your character, through your experience. And I think it relates to people a lot more that way.
It does.
Yeah.
I think people are a little bit sensitive now about like, you know, their criticisms and what they're supposed to be doing when they're not doing. I think what's important is to have more of a productive conversation about, you know, like, I think a lot of people just want to feel like they can also grow. They can also become the best version of themselves. And sometimes people just need to hear other people tell you how they got through it, you know? And I think that's enough. Like I said, subtly enough, that can create such a huge impact, right? And also empathy, being empathetic. Like, subhanAllah, I feel like that's kind of rare these days to find people who are just genuinely empathetic about life and the journey it takes and the toll it takes on people. And I think people are just really resonating with that empathetic tonality to the stories and space. But yeah, alhamdulillah.
It feels more raw and like you can connect better with the person, like when they're being open and honest. And I think in terms of your life story and how you eventually got to podcasting, I'm not sure if you were dreaming of that from a young age, but what does like the trailer of your life look like?
Okay, this is a very good question. I was thinking about what the trailer of my life. Honestly, I think my story would be a coming of age story. I think it would be a coming of age story in terms of like finding yourself. I was telling my friends, I would imagine it to be a bit like English and foreign a little bit. Yeah. Because the characters around me are Somali. I would imagine them speaking Somali, you know? Of course. But it would be about a story about a girl finding herself, and then maybe perhaps finding herself allowed her to help others find themselves. You know, like it's just like this fullness about you, but being a full person allows you to inspire others in the way you never imagined. But it also, everything begins with us, right? We can't impact people the way we want if we don't impact ourselves first. So, yeah.
Do you think it's like a domino effect of self-discovery almost?
Domino effect, yeah, I think so. I think I have a very iffy relationship with the word self-discovery because people write self-help books all the time. Yeah. I always say these books, mashallah, plagiarism. I just feel like they're taking it from the Quran and Sunnah. Because like, this sounds like tawakkul. You know, this sounds like, you know, yeah, it always sounds so familiar. And I always say, like, subhanAllah, like our religion is about that, you know, and encourages it. And I just want to encourage women to explore that in the way that they need to without shame. Yeah.
You mentioned that your story would be a blend between like English and foreign.
Yeah.
So like, how big has the Somali culture been in your life? And I guess helping you reach where you've been.
I mean, storytelling is a huge like cultural tradition. So like my mom's a storyteller. My mom was a poet as well. The way that she used to explain certain things to me was through her poetry or through like a story that she told. My grandmother was big on storytelling. So for me, it's like I only know how to explain difficult concepts through stories. Even when I used to do presentations at university, I'd go through a winded story. My teacher would be like, "What are you doing?" But at the end, I would always stick the landing. Because I mean, that's how I've understood life in that way. And so for me, it's like a big part of me. So much so all the stories, all the seasons, I open up with my own story. Because you can't ask other people for their stories if you don't show yours. You don't share up your stories. And so I remember just like my mom played a huge impact role in my life. So if you notice in season 1, you hear her recite her poetry. And then when I took her to Umrah in my second season opener, an episode Had I Known, obviously my mom's poetry when she was leaving the Roda. Yes. I really wanted to record that. Yeah,
and that was so powerful.
And I translated it, right? And my mom, like, it made me really emotional because to hear my mom say, like, I've always wanted to come here. My daughter brought me here. You know, just it just made me feel like everything was full circle. You know, subhanAllah, because my mother was very dutiful to her mom. You know, and I think, you know, and she told me something I never knew, which was that my grandma made dua for her that she would have a child that would do what she did for her. And she, in her poetry, she said, today was a full circle. I saw what my mom prayed for me so many years ago. And so I started to even understand dua differently. I was like, oh my God, our dua is pending from people I haven't even, like, that have passed
away.
years ago. I'm starting to see the fruits of it. I didn't even think about that. I used to just think about my parents, mine, like, you know, people around, but the non-living, you know, like, it just blew my mind of how powerful dua is, and how important it is to our trajectory in life. And yeah, it's such a powerful moment. And I didn't even record it. My friend recorded it. I was just in the moment, just watching my mom.
Of course.
You know, we just came out doing, you know, praying 2 rakats in the roda, and in the actual roda.
Yeah.
You know, and there was a situation that occurred that got us in there. It's like a whole story.
It's a whole story.
And you have to go listen to the episode.
You need to watch it, yeah.
You have to listen to the episode, but there's a whole story that got us there, and I really believe is the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not only did he allow me to go, but he gave me the best experience I could ever have. And so all that waiting, you know, alhamdulillah, was worth it. Beyond worth it. And you know, it's true when they say there's khayr in delay.
Oh, yeah.
And I think sometimes people feel like they're waiting on something and it's not happening, but I promise you there is delay in it. There's good in their delay. And so
there's so much wisdom in what happens, like, in our experiences, in our parents' experiences, you know, things that we understand it from our parents, where our parents will say, do this, and we'll be like, we don't want to do it, or it doesn't make sense to us, and it'll make sense to us in a year or 2 years or 20 years down the track.
It's like an unseen wisdom.
It's an unseen wisdom, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has the greatest unseen wisdom that you know we don't realize.
Absolutely.
Talking of storytelling is so pivotal in the Quran as well. So it's part and parcel of Islam, I would say. Like, we learn so many stories in the Quran, you know, of the prophets, of righteous people, even of evil people in the Quran. We know stories of, you know, Pharaoh. And then in the Seerah, we have so many stories of the prophets, the righteous companions. So if you were to pick one story from the Quran that you resonate with the most right now, I feel like it changes.
Because it all changes, bro.
It changes.
And that's the miracle of the Quran, right?
Yeah.
It's like every story somehow tailors to you based on what you're going through. Right now, I just recently just did an episode a few weeks back, and I asked the guest, you know, what ayah, you know, reflects your story most. She was telling me the story of Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam, and what she was explaining and the hardships that she went through. I feel like everyone at some point can relate to Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam. Like, at some point there's an intersection there. But his story is extremely detailed, it's extremely vast, and my teacher always say there's gems in there. Like, you think you know the story full face, but every time you read it, there's something new to be learned by that story. And I say right now, like, I'm really like going and reading the story of Prophet Yusuf right now, and I'm seeing him with new eyes and new lens. After, I can't say too much about what the episode's about. Just know it had something to do with the Quran. But I was like, wow, I never, she told me things I didn't know that I was like, oh, I never saw it that way. And then now I'm like, I'm really, you know, connecting to it in a way I never had before.
Surah Yusuf is Ahsanul Qasas.
Yeah.
One of the best stories.
It is.
If you look at the context as well, if I'm not mistaken, it was revealed around the time of the year of sorrow. So the Prophet ﷺ had lost members of his family. So you can imagine how imperative to see that story and read the ayats of that chapter. It truly is beautiful.
It has everything. It has family. It has, like, you know, overcoming hardship. It has isolation. It has so many
patience.
It has patience. There's so many themes in it that I think everyone can find something in, you know? And it's
got forgiveness.
It gives ultimate forgiveness.
Ultimate forgiveness.
SubhanAllah.
It's absolutely, like, it's hard to comprehend as well. It's like, how do you move past something so big? And as a prophet, like, he had that enough in his heart to say, you know, like, I forgive you.
Yeah.
And I think that's so beautiful, and something that we may not be able to apply it, like, to a great extent, but as much as we can learn so many lessons from the story of Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam.
My favorite part is the actual fulfillment of the dua that he had in the beginning. And in the end, it also comes, you know, full circle. That's a very chilling moment.
Yeah, it's a beautiful story.
I
mean, it's subhanAllah. You know, you're talking about stories of Quran. Like, that is, like, you know, that's how we receive information. That is how we best understand the things that we need to understand. The things that Allah wants to tell us through stories. That's why I always say stories are so important.
Yeah.
Because Allah started to, you know, if He's telling us through stories, it's not something for us to understand how we understand certain things or need to be spoken to. So I'm like, stories is like, they always say every successful business has a good story. Every successful product has a story.
Is a story.
Everything is a story.
Yeah.
The faster you locate what that is, I mean, there's things to come out of it. So, yeah, alhamdulillah.
We talk about family, we talk about stories, and then what about the Muslim community? Have you ever faced like any backlash or any sort of anti, that kind of...
In this life, in this dunya, you're always going to get the good and the bad. There's no such thing as just taking the good and just going with it. I think with everything comes responsibility. And I always say, TDS, subhanAllah, for 2 years, I never saw a single negative comment. Like, it was bizarre. It was almost, I don't know, sometimes I think about was Allah protecting me?
That was unexpected?
And it was bizarre. I just never thought it. I was like, oh man. I guess because also maybe people are just not have the patience to go listen to a podcast and criticize. I don't know. It just, I never saw anything. And then it was like, I think the time that we were charting, and I mean, obviously because the numbers are there, everyone's like, what is going on? Is when all that, like, we had a backlash that happened. But it was just, for me, it was like, it was daunting to see, like, especially because a lot of the backlash wasn't truthful. Yeah. And I have this, I guess, maybe naive expectation of Muslims to treat me like as their sister. If they saw a concern, they'd talk to me or advise me, but instead I saw something else. But something I told myself privately was, I can't just enjoy the glory, the good parts of something that I'm doing for the sake of Allah SWT. I have to take the test of it as well. If I ran after that, then what does it say about my sincerity? Did I just want the praise and this and that and third, right? Is that all I just wanted? Or did I want to do this truly for his sake? Then I have to take the pain part of it, right? With every story, there's pain, right? There's, there's redemption, there's this, there's that. So I just have to be able to be honest with myself. Who am I doing this for? And if I was doing it for people, then I would have left after that. I would have packed it up and said, thank you, everybody. Jazakallah khair. This was a fun ride. But that was not what I did it for.
Yeah, it all comes back to your intention.
Yeah.
Like, if you have the right intention and you're doing it purely for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then ultimately nothing else matters in between.
Yeah, absolutely. Alhamdulillah. It was a good experience, and it was eye-opening as well. But yeah. But
at the same time, you've received immense support, right? And I think that outweighs everything. Yeah. You've kind of made Niqabis become a mainstream, which I absolutely adore. Like,
we're very big fans.
Yeah, I think it's not common. Like, it wasn't a common thing before. I feel like it wasn't.
No, I mean, subhanAllah, I grew up, a lot of my friends are Niqabis. So for me, it's like a normal thing. But I think a lot of people were surprised that the podcast was hosted by a Niqabi because we're not video. Yeah. Like how it is right now. We weren't video. And so a lot of people didn't know I was a Niqabi until like people started to find out. And some people it shocked them. Some people were put off by it. But I didn't care, for me, Niqab is, the way that I, excel. It's, I like to call it the veil between me and the dunya, My Niqab is my veil. It reminds me, that like not to lose myself in this world with its monetary and its glitz and glam and all that good stuff. But I wanted it to just remind me like what my purpose is. So it's something I do personally. But did I expect that like the podcast getting so much success that I would go to cities and see people say, I'm wearing the niqab now and I do this, or people take pictures of themselves with glasses on and be like, I look at Cadar. I literally die of laughter because, I'm glad that they can see that, Niqabis are intelligent, they're, talented, they're gifted, they're not timid or confused or oppressed or judgmental. Or no personality, no spice, as my friend said, no spice, no nothing, just plain. Yeah. It's not true, There are a lot of Niqabis out there in the world who are influential, who are doing big things, who are, and you just don't know of them. But it's just the podcast just spotlights to me, But I promise you, I'm not the first.
Yeah, 100%.
I promise you, I'm not.
And you won't be the last.
And I would definitely will not be the last. But alhamdulillah.
It's interesting to see how media represents women. I had this experience a few weeks ago where my friends and I were at a local beach, and I think we were having some fun, and one of my friends brought a full tub of water balloons and she started throwing water balloons at us. Anyways, we finished our game. It was really great. And then a few people came up to us and they were like, it was really nice to see you guys play. And they weren't meaning it in a negative way or in a positive way. They're just commenting on what they had observed. Yeah. And I was then speaking and reflecting on it with my friends, and I said, maybe they hadn't seen that before. Like maybe that was really unusual to them,
Yeah.
and that's why they felt the need to come and talk to us and say, hey, that was really nice of you guys to be playing with each other. And I was like, cool.
It's a bit dehumanizing.
Yeah, a little bit.
A little bit, you know, where they just think that you just there's a outlook about Niqabis, right? A lot of the way they use our images is to tell stories that are completely negative, and they'll even put like maybe the article's about poverty, but the image of the article is a Niqabi. What does that have to do with, like, you know, like what does that have to do with anything, right? Or a war-torn country, you'll see a Niqabi. Yeah. Right? And subhanAllah, it's like, it's what they've used imagery of niqab that really upsets me, right? But I'm glad to break glass ceilings, you know, with that, you know, and I hope I can be a good example of like modesty and, you know, just doing good work while being covered, being unapologetic, being, you know, a person that's balanced, well balanced. That's my goal. That's my dream, you know, but my niqab liberates me. Yeah. Respectfully. You know, anybody who doesn't understand why I wear it, it's my choice. I'm happy to wear it. It protects me. It honors me, you know, elevates me. Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah, that's so beautiful to hear.
Yeah. May Allah keep us steadfast.
I mean, all of us.
So kind of moving on, like if we talked about how TDS is, again, not the most explicit in terms of da'wah, but so would you still classify yourself as a da'wah podcast?
I would describe TDS as a storytelling platform, where it tells stories about Muslims.
About Muslims.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
Right? It tells stories about Muslims. Muslims are Muslims, and they have pain, sorrow, sadness, heartbreak, grief,
happiness,
and joy, and all these, you know, and all these things. I just want to tell their stories truthfully, to counteract the stories being told about us, but not by us. Yeah. Right? And so, yeah.
I think in doing so, you, like, again, like you mentioned, Allah is central to all of those stories.
Yeah.
And so naturally, the conversation around the role that faith played and the role that, you know, the Quran and Islam and positive role models that are Muslims as well also played in their journeys and in their stories. And I think it's beautiful that you're able to do that and actually get to so many people who won't necessarily respond to something that is explicitly da'wah, that is, you may be doing the wrong thing, or, you know, or this is a better direction, or learn this or do that. And I think it's such a good approach to get to people who may not still be comfortable with their identity and where they're at.
In this, you know, political, like, climate, in this, like, people need to hear things a bit, you know, differently. And there should be a plethora of ways that we, you know, tell stories. But even that, like, our existence is merely da'wah already. You know, like, that's why it's hard to say, like, is it me standing here is da'wah. The way I look is da'wah. Yeah. I don't even say a word.
So
I don't even speak. I don't even have to enter space saying I'm trying to do that. That's not my intent. Right? But what's happening? Yeah. Right? SubhanAllah. So it's just, it's our identity. It's our belief. Yeah. Right? And that is literally seen on us. Yeah. I enter the room with my right foot. Like, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like, how can you then ask person, are you giving da'wah? They enter the room with the right foot. Like, that's who they are. Yeah. You know, they're living what they believe in. And those who don't live that way or the outside take it as da'wah, right? Especially when you ask them and they explain why they do it. Yeah. You're explaining, right? SubhanAllah. But da'wah could be very strategic and all that good stuff. But for me, I just want to tell stories of Muslims are authentic and real. You know, and genuine, and that I personally connect to, and I think might be good for others to connect to. But I always try to also do it the right way. Yeah. You know, I really try to do the right way. I try to do it with, you know, advisors. I try to check all my boxes to ensure that, you know, I'm doing the right, because it is a manna. Yes. You know, although all the success came and stuff like that, I what I'm worried about is keeping me up at night. You know, is this good? Is it not good? You know, am I helping? Am I not? Those are questions I'm always, you know, but I think it's a good thing. Yeah. You know, I think what's dangerous is to think that I'm okay always. I think that's very dangerous. I think you should always be in a state of worry, you know, and concern, because then you'll always, you know, be doing better, trying to do better.
You need to have a critical lens of where you are at and where you want to go, so that you don't make the same mistakes that if you were making, you don't make them again, and that you learn from your experiences and you make sure that you're going towards the right direction. You're continuing on.
Absolutely. And I'm not perfect. Yeah. Neither are my guests. Nobody's perfect. But we're trying our best, you know.
May Allah help us and aid us. And
I mean, all of us.
I mean.
I think one of the most recent advices actually I heard about sincerity was be sincere in the things you think you're sincere in. And if you really just stop and pause, you're like, wait, I think I'm being sincere here, but I need to actually assess my sincerity. And it's one of the things the scholars grappled with.
Yeah.
It's a big thing. You're having that intent purely for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
And it requires renewing.
I know.
Yeah, and you got to recheck
all the time. It's like cleaning your car.
Yeah.
You know?
Which I don't do.
Yeah. And then you're supposed to invite people in that car. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, it's an important work. And we ask Allah to make it easy for us. And then we ask Allah not to leave us to ourselves. And He aids us and He supports us and He guides us to what is right and what is best.
What a beautiful way.
Yeah.
And I think just as a final word, what advice would you have to fellow content creators, maybe even Muslim as well, in finding their voice and finding their identity?
What advice would I give? I would caution and say that, what are you building? Like, what are you trying to give voice to? Like, what are you trying to say? I get a lot of people who want to get into podcasting. And I always have like this like difficult, conversation. I'm like, what are you building? Because I don't support everybody's build. Not everything deserves support. Some things it has to be good. Because there are things that are out here that actually are to our demise.
Yeah.
And so it's like, is our work for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or is it for something else? Right? Because you're going to be given a lot of opportunities, but not every opportunity is good. That's the truth of it.
Yeah.
Right? And you're going to be in this like pickle. We have to choose right or left. Right? But I know success is with Allah. Even if it doesn't, like if what you're taking is not going to give you anything, it's the better route to go. But your voice is so important because your voice is like what you believe. Like your voice, when you speak, what are you saying? What is in your heart? The tongue is such an important vessel and is a dangerous one as well. But what do you believe? Like what your voice is like, what you're sharing is what you believe in. And so I like for me, it's like your voice is in what you think and you believe in how you see the world. And like, how good is it? Like, is it a good perspective? Is it good? Are you in a good standing with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Have you learned what you believed in? Have you learned your imperfections, your mistakes, what you're like, have you learned who you are? Because I find that a lot of people who don't know who they are, think they found their voices, can do a lot of damage. SubhanAllah, there's a lot of podcasts out there that say things they shouldn't. Yeah. And rally groups of people when in reality they're causing a lot of pain. And it's just a bunch of people who I just feel like haven't, done that work personally first, who think they have. And I think that's the dangerous part. It's like, I think it's more for us to be a bit more self-critical, and a little bit more like, am I saying the right thing? And I think everything goes back to understanding the Quran and Sunnah, studying it, understanding, what the character of Prophet Salam was like, how can I emulate it, and being upfront about what your flaws are, and working on those areas.
Working on those and growing from that, and always being like, it's a continuous journey of growth. It's
always,
not going to stop.
Always.
You're always going to go back, and you're always going to be like, hey, I got to fix this, and I got to fix this, and I got to fix this.
To the cradle, the cradle to the grave, right? You're just going to be in this place of improvement. Alhamdulillah, wallahi. There's always an opportunity to go back and to fix. So people always think it's like doom and gloom. Nah, I'm a big believer of redemption. Like, I love, as you should, redemption stories like no other. Like, I feel like I did a podcast just to hear redemption stories. I'm trying to hear the underdog story. They were taken down, they got back up. And so there's always an opportunity to change and evolve. Alhamdulillah.
Well, we'd like to
segue
into a very interesting game to see if you know your Aussie sisterhood.
Yes.
And you can connect to your Aussie sisterhood and our wacky slang.
Yo, my goodness.
How are you? Have you heard Aussie slang before?
You know what? I haven't heard too much. I just heard a few, but I hope I can. I'm going to be surprised regardless. But I like slang because I'm a bit of a Toronto girl,
Maybe you can teach us some Toronto.
Toronto's like, oh no, I am like,
oh no,
I'm not that good at it. My brothers are never good. For me, I just take a couple words here and there, but alhamdulillah.
All right, we've got our first word.
Okay.
First word, which is snag.
Snag.
Yeah, a snag.
What do you reckon?
A snag.
Off the bat.
Okay, but
we can give you a sentence.
Okay, give me a sentence.
I went down to Bunnings and I had a snag. So you probably don't know what Bunnings is either. It's like a warehouse.
I went to Bunnies and I got a snag.
It's a tools warehouse.
So they've got like hardware,
Oh my
Bits of-
It's
goodness.
a hardware store, and you go
Subhanallah.
down to Bunnings and you get a snag.
You got a snag. Yeah, this is really hard. I'm like, what? Did you get a tool? Did you what are you doing at a warehouse? What's a snag?
A snag is a
It's actually food.
What?
So I think, it's,
Why are we
it's
going down to
like-
Bunnies? Why are we going to a tool shop to
I
get
know,
food?
I know. It's
Aussie tradition.
culture. I think bread and like a bit of protein.
Bit of protein. That's a snag.
Yep.
So what I had had breakfast this
So
morning.
it's pretty much a hot dog.
yeah.
Snag is
It's not a hot
Who
dog.
knew?
It's a sausage in a piece of bread.
Like
It's
a
not even in a hot dog bun.
Yeah.
It's in bread. That's a snag.
Well noted.
There you go.
Jazakallah khair.
You can go eat a snag now.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna ask about it after.
A halal one.
Inshallah.
All right. For the next one, it is a sickie. What is a sickie
A
in Aussie
sickie?
slang? Yep.
It is a sickie. Can I get a sentence? Oh my God, these words have nothing that sounds
There's
similar to it.
Yeah.
No, there is.
Think about the word sick. I think.
Sick. And you said
Sickie.
So
sickie.
you take a sickie or you chuck a sickie. You're not feeling well.
a medication? Is sickie a medication? Like
Have
you're
another
sick
Guess. Yeah. You're sick.
Okay, yeah.
and you get a sickie,
No.
or you go to a sickie.
No, that's not a doctor.
This is horrible.
Wow, Aussie slang. No one can help you.
You chuck a
There's-
sickie.
You chuck a sickie.
Yeah. That means you take a sick day.
Why are you chunking it?
You're chucking it. You're
Why are
chucking
you
a
chucking
sickie.
it? It's like taking a sick day. We need to reevaluate Aussie slang. That is it. It has to happen. A sickie, that's crazy.
All right, we've got arvo.
Arvo.
No, with a not avocado.
Arvo.
With an R.
Arvo.
Arvo.
I love how your accent.
I had to change my accent so you could understand it.
You have to switch.
Arvo.
Arvo.
Give me a sentence because
We're actually filming in the Arvo right now.
studio
I think
in a
time.
building.
Time.
A time.
Yes.
Arvo's a time.
Yes. Right now we're in the Arvo. Like it's right now.
What time is it? It's
It's almost like 3, 4
It's 3. Yeah, 4.
It's
right.
giving like
It's giving.
All right. The time of day
Arvo?
is.
Asr. Like
No.
Yeah.
is it? Like give
I
up.
wish. If only.
It's giving time. What is giving?
Afternoon.
Oh,
It's
subhanallah.
the afternoon.
I think she had it.
You know,
though.
respectfully, guys, I just came off a 34-hour sleep. I'm not a happy human right now. You're saying big words and they're all getting mixed
All
up.
right, this one
subhanallah.
should be easy.
Okay.
This one should be easy. Brekkie.
Brekkie.
Yeah.
Is it like breaking fast?
Yeah. Breakfast.
You're lying.
Breakfast.
I
That's it.
Breaking fast.
I literally thought I was playing around right now. So
No,
I'm
no.
just gonna say it, man.
Brekkie.
Look at me. See, that was easy though.
Yeah.
Arvo, come on, man. Arvo
was
sounds nothing
hard.
like afternoon. You know, that one sounds just like breakfast.
This one's pretty easy, I think. Cuz.
Cuz,
Yeah.
like cousin.
Like cousin.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Easy. Simple. I feel
You
like that's
guys stole that.
that's an
That
ethnic
is-
thing, I think.
That is not your.
I think that's ethnic.
Yeah,
Plagiarism.
yeah, indeed, he did. Indeed, he did.
We've got Barbie.
Barbie.
Yeah.
Isn't it just Barbie?
Not just Barbie.
Barbecue?
Yeah.
Oh, you guys say Barbie like we're gonna do a Barbie right now.
Yeah, we're going to have a Barbie.
It's a, oh, okay.
But we
I
don't
like
say
that.
shrimp. We say prawns.
You see prawns?
Yeah.
Very fancy.
Yeah. People,
Prawn.
Eloquent.
it's wide in the media that we say shrimp on the Barbie, but we don't.
Oh, okay.
We
But you
say
guys
prawns.
We say
We
prawns.
say Barbie, but we don't say prawn.
Okay, that makes sense. Prawns. Yeah.
Chaka Yui.
Chaka Yui. You guys are doing a U-turn.
Oh, you got it. Yes.
'Cause
Brilliant.
we say we're chucking a Yui right now. That's what we say too.
No way, really?
Yeah, chucking a Yui.
that
Am I
there's a
crazy?
commonality.
Chucking a
This-
Yui. Chucking a
There's some
Yui.
commonality.
Yeah, not
Yeah.
bad.
All right, that was the end of that.
The game is
How
over.
was that?
It was fun. I enjoyed it. I learned a great deal. Now I feel like I get the Aussie slang now.
Now you're going to meet all the sisters, and if they say anything, if they throw anything at you, you're
And I'm going to understand
you're
it.
ready.
Absolutely.
Yeah, beautiful.
Absolutely. Alhamdulillah, thanks, guys.
Thank you so much for coming down. It's been a pleasure.
I know.
And until our next one, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.